Roosevelt was born into a wealthy family but was often sick as a child. He got his start in politics in New York State Assembly before becoming Police Commissioner of New York City and Governor of New York, Secretary of Navy, Vice President of the United States, and eventually President upon the untimely death of President William McKinley. The political bosses in New York believed they could get rid of him by moving him up to vice presidency. However, when McKinley died, Roosevelt suddenly became the most powerful man in the country. Roosevelt saw the presidency as a bully pulpit, which he was able to effectively influence the news media and shape legislation to benefit the common people. Roosevelt referred to his progressive reforms as a square deal, to which all common people deserve. The primary components of Roosevelt's push for reform include the three C's: control over corporations, consumer protections, and conservation. Under the Sherman Antitrust Act in 1902, the President ordered the Justice Department to sue the Northern Security Companies, which was able to secure a monopoly over Northwestern railroads. By 1904, the Supreme Court ordered the dissolution of the company.
Teddy knew that he would need the support of two major constituencies, Congress and the American Republic. Roosevelt came to an understanding with conservation congressional Republicans, gaining their support in exchange for holding back the more progressive items on his agenda. However, Roosevelt knew he could refrain from breaking up monopolies if he wanted backing by the American public. Therefore, Roosevelt continued to bring suits against the Beef Trust, the Oil Trust, and the Tobacco Trust. This increased his popularity with the American public as he rode a huge wave of public support to easily win the 1904 election, a public mandate unlike anything the nation has ever seen.
While President Roosevelt had continued to bust trusts and regulate the railroad industry, investigative reporters known as muckrakers were busy investigating social, political, and economic corruption, calling for society to change and the improvement of equality for most Americans. One such muckrakers whose investigative work in the meatpacking industry helped bring about reform for the consumer was Upton Sinclair. Upon reading Upton Sinclair's description of the conditions in the Chicago meatpacking industry in the jungle, President Roosevelt appointed a commission of experts to investigate the meatpacking industry, and upon the commission's report that reinforced Sinclair's disgusting descriptions of the meatpacking industry, Roosevelt pushed for the passing of the Meat Inspection Act. The act created a program at the federal level for the inspection of meat, as well as strict requirements for cleanliness and meatpacking. Meanwhile, many Americans had exploited the natural environment. Forests had been leveled, prairies had been plowed, cattle were allowed to overgraze on the Great Plains, soil dumps from coal companies littered the land, and rivers had been polluted. Roosevelt condemned the attitude that Americans' natural resources were an endless supply.
As with most other progressives, President Roosevelt's push for reform did not include civil rights for African Americans. While the president did support a few individual African Americans, such as Booker T. Washington, who was head of an all-black training school, the Tuskegee Institute, the progressive movement mostly focused on the needs of middle-class whites. Additionally, the two presidents who followed Roosevelt, Taft and Wilson, also did little to advance the goal of reducing or eliminating racial equality.